Most people don't picture rainforest when they think of Canada, but stretching from Northern California to Alaska lies the largest temperate rainforest on the planet, and the majority of it is right here in British Columbia. Today, we're heading into the woods of the Sunshine Coast, a name that might surprise you, considering it gets over 2,000 millimeters of rain a year, to explore a hidden waterfall in the forest. And if we're lucky, we might even walk away with an image. So a couple of weeks ago, I was driving on this forest road here, and I saw a raging waterfall over through the trees. And there was nowhere to pull over. It's a very narrow road. However, today I'm back. I'm bringing my camera gear, bringing you guys. I left the car just a little bit down the road. We're gonna go check it out and see if we can find a composition. All right, here it is. Oh, that is beautiful. Now, if only there was a way to get down there. Here I followed just a small trail that takes you from the side of the road. Looks like there's a bit of a trail leading down there, and we can see where that gets us. Yep, let's check it out. Got a nice stream there, and the waterfall is up there. What I would like to find is basically some viewpoint that's down at the bottom of the waterfall, where we can still see, the entire waterfall and look up. One kind of annoying thing is the waterfall is over there, but the sun is up there. And it is nice to have the sun as like a focal point. There's some sun rays, there's something by the waterfall. So this is maybe not the right positioning, not the right time of day, but let's still see what we can find. Yeah, that's nice. I like that arc over here. That's pretty cool. One challenge with waterfalls in this area is there's often these scraggly branches that you can see behind me, and they kind of muddy up the composition, muddy up the scene. So we'll see if we can work around that somehow. And if you're curious, this is the view from the very top. So that's just the top part, and then you can see where it kind of ends way over there. So I've made my way up a little bit, and I'm just checking the map, the topographic map, to see if there's any more elevation gain, because if there is, we might have more cascades up there, and I would love to explore that. But as you saw on the map, it looks like it kind of plateaus. So I'm gonna go up just a little bit more, see what's there, and then probably make my way back down. Yeah, this over here is not much of a waterfall, so I'll keep moving up, but I think this might be the last step, if that's the right word. I'm not sure. The last kind of waterfall part of the river stream. Beautiful forest though. All right, making my way back down. There's not much up there. Check out the size of these trees though. This is, just for reference, this is my hand on a tree, and it's massive. Oh man, that's huge. All right, back to the waterfall. So it's very difficult to find a place where you can see the entire waterfall. It's just blocked in so many different ways. I want to see if I can get somewhere down there and at least capture this arc over here, and maybe I'll see some more of that. So let's see if I can make that work. Kind of a nice view here, but there's no foreground. It's just a drop over here. But you do get to capture a little bit of that entire section there. But I'm gonna keep moving. All right, so I went up a little bit into the other side of the waterfall, as you can see. Previously, I was walking along there, and I've crossed over further down. Basically just waded in. Rubber boots are a piece of gear that I am missing. So I just got my pants and shoes wet, but that's okay. And I'm seeing if there's something here. There might be. I'm not in love with this. I mean, it's okay. Maybe I can shoot from somewhere down there or make my way over here. So I'm gonna just experiment a little bit here and see what we get. This is the tree situation I was talking about. It's just so messy. It's very hard to make it work. All right, so I am experimenting with some compositions here. I will say I'm not too happy with this. This is okay, but there's nothing interesting going on in the foreground. That section is kind of messy, and you can't see that much of that area over there. So this is the best I've been able to get, but I'm not too happy with it. I did try to take an image here, 1/8 of a second, experimenting with like 1/10, 1/5, somewhere around there, to slow down the water. Polarizer just to bring down a little bit of glare, and to allow me to slow down the shutter speed, because that area just over there, that section there, is very bright. So that's what we've got right now, but I think I'm gonna keep looking, because this is okay. It's not that cool. So I came up from just over there, went around here through the trees, and now I'm up here, and this is kind of cool, but I'm really struggling finding something workable here. There's nothing to stand on too. If I could get over there, but I can't. That's kind of sketchy. This is a nice fern here, so I wonder if I could somehow use that fern as a foreground. Not quite. When you have the fern in the foreground, there's really not much up there. Really, yeah, not a lot of cascades, unfortunately. Something here, potentially, but I don't know. It's kind of messy. Yeah, I don't think it works. I don't think it works, unfortunately. Oh boy, that's cold. Yeah, I thought maybe something just here, but I don't think that works either. All right, guys, I think I've been defeated by this waterfall. I just could not find a composition, which happens, that's all right. That's actually most photography outings are like this. You go on an adventure and that's the best part of it. If you get an image, that's just a bonus. But as far as getting an image goes, I do have one more trick up my sleeve.
Alright, so here we are back at the computer in Lightroom. So let's go through the images and then we will go ahead and edit one of them. Or rather, I've already done the edit, but I will walk you through my thought process. So I've already done a bit of filtering here, and I will say I'm not super happy with any of the images from this outing, but I do think one of them turned out to be kind of cool at the end after the edit. So going through the images, here we've got, this is a drone shot from the top, and this is, I more just wanted to show you this so that you can see what the water looks like when you don't have a proper shutter speed. So this looks, as you can see here, and this is with a slower shutter speed. So this is 1/5 of a second, and I think this looks much nicer. But this image is not very good, in my opinion. First, there's this scraggly branches, as I was saying when I was on location. And then there's just no foreground leading you into the scene. The waterfall kind of just leads you into nowhere, into the edge of the screen. There's nothing interesting here. This is slightly better, but I don't think there's anything worth editing here. There is, by the way, already a slight edit applied to the images in Lightroom, just so that you can get a sense of what it looks like with absolutely no editing. Well, this was a drone pano, so it would look like that. That's not very helpful for us to decide what to do with it. So yeah, there's a small edit applied. Continuing, this one, same thing as before. There's just, doesn't really work. An important thing that I want to draw your attention to here is we have this rock and it blocks the waterfall. And that is a major error for me, because it kind of interrupts the line that we have. It would have been much nicer to leave a space here so that you can see the waterfall. And that's what I did here. So this is a better image than the previous one. Still not anything special, just similar to one of the ones before. Now, this is a little bit further down and it's getting kind of interesting. One major issue here is just how messy it is. All of this mess here, so many branches. But I do like that there's this nice curve. I really don't like that there's this log and this, it just cuts right through the kind of nice line of the waterfall once again. This is a little bit better. That previous one, there's just nothing interesting in the foreground. Here it's a bit nicer. There's some of these rocks and you can see how your eye kind of gets picked up here and then you can flow through the scene. You do get blocked here, but then keep going up, but then there's nothing that it's leading you towards. You could, of course, paint in some light here. The light is kind of coming down. But yeah, this particular one, not worth editing. This one, this is just terrible. You have all these branches pointing in the center and the water kind of, it all leads you to the center, which is just a pile of rocks. This is another shot where you have a nice stream, but it leads you to nothing. Back to the waterfall, this one is kind of okay. It does have some of those issues I mentioned earlier, but I do like that you can see more of that S. It's a nice shape, and there's a little bit of balance in the scene with some of this stuff here balanced over here. And this is kind of a similar idea. I didn't end up editing either of these further, but if you really work on it, maybe it could get somewhere. And now moving on to the actual photos I took with the camera. So this one, I this one I don't like since the waterfall is cut off on the left. But this one, I do. What's working for me here is there's a nice balance of kind of heavy rock here, tree, and then the heavy rocks here, and some of this dark mossy slope. So the scene is framed nicely. You can see the waterfall, and there seems to be an overall nice balance of the different elements in the scene. It does have these big scraggly branches and kind of uglier rocks in the middle, but I did tone them down a bit with the adjustment brush when I was doing this initial edit. There also is the issue I mentioned earlier where the waterfall is cut off by other things, but this was probably the best I could come up with, and a similar take is the one I ended up editing. So we'll come back to that. I did try more of a portrait style shot of the waterfall, but I don't think this works, and it is pretty unbalanced. There's just all of this here, and on the left, I feel like it's not balanced by anything. Same with this, just nothing that interesting. I do like how the water crashes on this rock, but that is also present in these shots here. So this is a similar scene to before. And by the way, as you'll notice, there is a crop that I applied in some cases. For example, this one, there's a 16:9 crop. So if we go back to the original, there's nothing too interesting in the very immediate foreground, and this branch is quite ugly. And I feel like you don't really need all of this forest here, the upper parts of those trees. I think the focus really should be on the waterfall and just having just enough of these tree trunks. So that's why I think this works much nicer. And then I was just experimenting with different shutter speeds. And I think that's important with shooting water, just to get a nice variety. And you can even blend several different exposures. At the end here, I have a couple portrait style shots of the waterfall once again. But yeah, they're okay. I like how you can feel the energy of the water in this one, especially with all of the just droplets flying. But yeah, it doesn't strike me as anything too good. And lastly, we have this shot, which is just terrible. Basically, you just kind of fall off the bottom left of the frame. Yeah, it's just not good. I did try to crop it from the original because I thought the square crop might work, but yeah, no, I don't like this at all. So going to the one I did end up editing. Most of the edit is done with the adjustment brush. And this is not the final version. I did a lot more in Photoshop, which I will get to. But often I'll do kind of a starting point in Lightroom with the adjustment brush and just some tweaks here. So there was just some exposure tweaks, lowering clarity a bit since it's a messy forest scene and I want to make it feel a bit calmer. Profile corrections, and I did put a landscape profile on this one. Sometimes I'll do this, sometimes I will instead increase the blue primary saturation and then decrease the blue itself saturation in HSL. And this kind of boosts all of the colors, not just blue, when you increase the blue primary. So they achieve a somewhat similar effect. But in any case, with the adjustment brush, this is what it looks like without it. And I won't go through every single one, but I'll talk you through the goal I'm trying to achieve. I can make a more in-depth tutorial of using different tools if you're interested, but to keep this video from becoming too long, I'll keep things fairly high level. So one thing that stands out pretty obviously is the whole image is brighter, but specifically the things that are further away are more bright, and there's a bit more haze in the distance, like back here between the trees. So that is all done with the adjustment brush. There's less dark shadows in the midground as well, and this whole area is just less contrasty, lower clarity, draws a bit less attention. Then, of course, lowering the highlights over here to make that texture actually visible, and a bit of glow coming from the top from where the light is coming in with a big radial gradient. Finally, there's also some enhancements to the water. There's a bit more clarity. So we reduced the global clarity, but then bringing in a little bit of clarity as well as a bit of a blue hue to the water. And finally, there's also more contrast in the foreground. So that's our initial edit. And now let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop, and we'll take this image to its final version. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. The first thing I did was I really actually didn't know if I was going to end up editing this image all the way, if it's going to go anywhere. So I wanted to just apply some kind of fun adjustments just to see what it would look like. I don't always do this, but I do this sometimes to help stylize the images a little bit. So the first one was a few Nik Collection filters. The ones I used here were Pro Contrast, Contrast Color Range, Darken Light and Center, a little bit of Brilliance and Warmth, and Sunlight, which adds a little bit of glow. And those are really the only Nik Collection filters I use, if I use any at all. They're not necessary, and a lot of this can be done more manually as well. And in fact, this is true for a lot of the techniques and tools I'm using in this process. And you can see it's not a huge effect, but it does make the scene feel just a little bit more magical. All of them are done in kind of very small amounts, low opacity. You have to be careful to not go overboard with something like that. Then we've got this adjustment here, and this is basically using a sun from Luminar 4, just putting it in, putting the sun center up here, just to get a little bit of the sun rays effect. When you turn it on and off, you can see where they are, but really I kept the opacity low and the effect is very subtle. So it just creates a feeling of sun shining through more, which it absolutely was, but again, without going too far with it. And next, I wanted to create a little bit of depth. So what I did was I created some fog with Luminar 4 and then painted it in only to specific areas. So if I enable this mask, you can see it's red means it's painted out. So where there's less red, that's where it is. So kind of there in these areas, more in distance, just a little bit in the midground. And this is all done with a soft brush, just masking it out, or masking it in rather. So this is starting to look nice. There's a bit more depth to it and the colors are looking kind of nice. Next, I wanted to enhance some of the waterfall. I feel like it just looks a little bit dull in the scene. A lot of the other elements like these ugly branches are taking away attention. So I enhanced the waterfall just with some painting with a soft light layer and a low opacity brush. And then I also painted with a warm tone with, again, a soft light layer, low opacity. So just painting on some elements that the light is hitting to draw attention to some of the nicer elements, like some of these leaves and ferns over here. And also just enhancing that separation between the nearby trees and the further away ones. Next, I wanted to increase the clarity on the water just a little bit to accentuate some of these beautiful cascades. So here's how I did that. Basically, I created I stamped visible and in camera raw, increased the clarity, and then went ahead and masked it in to only select areas. So here's without that adjustment, and here's with it. I think there was also a small contrast boost. Next, I wanted to soften the more distant blacks a little bit. So you can see that is done here. It's masked out of the more nearby areas, but further away, the blacks are less dark. So once again, just enhancing depth. Next, I did a few color tweaks. So I felt like the image as is just looks maybe a little too green and flat. So I wanted to create a bit of color balance and blue the shadows. The first step was done with color balance and just literally doing that, bluing the shadows, warming the highlights. But I didn't want the water to become this red purple hue. So I created another color balance adjustment where I blued the highlights and then painted that in selectively onto the water. Next, I still felt like the scene is just lacking depth and that feeling of more atmosphere and air in the distance. So I once again stamped visible and then in camera raw, basically brightened everything up and then masked it into select areas. So this is after the camera raw adjustment and this is after masking it in. But now I felt like it's just too dark on the right compared to the left. We kind of lost that nice balance we had. So I added back a bit of a vignette. This is just done using gradients and a soft light layer. Next, I felt like this is looking nice, but this is still drawing my attention too much. So I did this and actually also increasing the contrast on the trees. What this really is just some painting of a dark hue with a soft light layer and a low opacity brush once again. Just trying to create some dimension and draw attention away from the less interesting elements and further enhancing the light on the waterfall and really drawing attention to that. Next, I wanted to further enhance the magical atmosphere and this perception of light coming down. So I did this. What this is just an overlay and a soft light layer of some radials with a nice soft warm hue. And then we're further darkening some elements. So further creating the dramatic, dark, mystical feeling. You'll notice there's a lot of similar things being done repeatedly, and I think that's how painting tends to work. You slowly and carefully build layers upon layers to get to the final result. So that is what we're doing here. And so now some of these elements here are becoming fairly dark, but there's still a lot of these branches that are kind of, the highlights are too bright and they're drawing attention. So I did some work on just the highlights. So just flattening these a little bit, because I want the attention to be going there. I want your eye to follow through the waterfall and into the light. And same this way. And keeping with that theme, I kind of wanted there to be a single focal point rather than all of this, the distant trees being very bright. We did add a lot of brightness and fog there to create depth, but I wanted the eye to go here, because this feels like kind of the main area where the light is really hitting, and it also is where the waterfall leads you to. So I further brightened some of this stuff here. This was done using a levels layer and then selectively painting in. Finally, I wanted to further enhance the light here a little bit just to really make sure that this is the focal point. And lastly, this is a very small adjustment, but this at the edge of the frame, this little spot on the rock just stood out to me, like it's kind of drawing your eye too much. So I just darkened that down. And so this is it. This is kind of the final image. This is where we started, and this is where we ended up. I'm not sure if I'm finished with this image. I tend to go back and keep working on it until I really feel like it's in a good place. But I do think it's looking fairly nice and magical. As far as composition goes, I don't think this is a great image. As I said earlier, I'm not too happy with any images from this outing, and I think it's possible to capture something better at this waterfall, and I do want to come back and try that at some point. But as far as this image goes, have you heard the expression polishing a turd? Now, I'm not sure if that's what I did here. Let me know your thoughts. Also, for some people, this is probably going overboard with editing. I personally like to go for a more unrealistic fantasy landscape feeling. My desktop background, for example, is this here. This is a fantasy art based on, I think it's based in Ashenvale Forest in World of Warcraft. So if this is the vibe I'm going for, I think I'm succeeding. But I know this type of editing is not for everyone, and probably some people would say this is kind of overcooked. By the way, it's always possible to dial back some of the adjustments if it feels like it's too much, and just, yeah. That's with 70% opacity. We can obviously lower it further, or just go in and tweak things more as needed. And I'll also do a quick comparison to the original version. All right, that's about it for today. I would love to hear your thoughts about any of the images here. Should I have edited a different one? Should I have not bothered editing any of them? Let me know. And I think that wraps it up for today. So thanks for joining me on this trip and on this post-processing session. I hope you got something out of it. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you again on the next adventure.